Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
we didn't plan who was going to do the intro, so everyone.
Oh, sorry, no, I was a little off. I still heard the intro music on. I'm like, are we on?
Well, welcome everyone to the .NET Machine Learning Community Stand-Up. We're super excited to have you here. Oh, Louise just left the chat. I'm sure he'll join back in. But super excited to have Becca and XiaoYun from the ML.NET tooling team on. Do you all want to do a quick intro? Becca, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Becca. I'm an engineer on the team. I've been with the team for about a year. I'm excited to be here today and talk to you guys about all these changes we've been doing. We've been kind of heads down trying to get all these done for I don't know how many months. So it's exciting to finally be able to show them to the world and talk about them.
Yay. XiaoYun?
Hi, I'm XiaoYun, and I work for ModelBuilder for about 2 years, and it's my first time in the stand-up, community stand-up, and I'm really excited to show what's going to happen next.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you. So we'll go into the model builder stuff after our community links and after a demo. Well, I guess the demo is technically model builder stuff, but Louise, do you want to get into the community links?
Yep, let's do it. Let's see here. Oh, whoops. There you go.
You're so unprepared today, Louise.
I know. Today it's a case of the Mondays. It feels like a Monday to me.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and share this here.
He says on a Wednesday.
All right, that's better. All right, let me share my link here in the chat so you folks can see everything that we're going to be going over. So we have a few things, content that people put together. This one here, I think comes from, yep, it's from Journey here. And he has a video talking about how you can simplify machine learning for developers with ML.NET. So this is specifically for .NET developers looking to get into machine learning, and Journey just goes over kind of, how the basics of ML.NET and things like that. I believe last week there was this meetup that took place. I believe this is the Ohio. Yep, there it is, the Central Ohio .NET Developer Group. And Ed Chaberneau, who I believe is an MVP, talked about using Blazor, ML.NET, and Cosmos DB. And I believe that what he used in this case is some sort of space application, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. It's like a kind of like an Uber for Mars. So if you ever want to figure out how much it would cost for you to take a ride to Mars, you can probably use Ed's app here. We have another really good video here from John Wood, and he talks about the 5 reasons why F# is a great choice for building machine learning and data science projects in 2021. And some of the things he discusses on here are things like the community and how the different libraries such as ML.NET and C# and all of the different things that are available for you to build these types of projects using .NET, and F# being one of the .NET languages, right, makes it really easy to do that. We also have here an ML.NET object detection tutorial put together by 01. And it basically just guides you through the different things that you would need to basically build an object detection model. I believe the model used here is YOLO. Yep, there it is. It's an Onyx model, and the type of model is YOLO, and again, it does object detection for a wide variety of very common objects. In this case, what you see here, right, is detecting objects such as people and dogs, right? So if you follow this guide here, it's going to kind of show you how you can build your own ML.NET sort of object detection application. This was a little bit different, still related to computer vision, but in this case, what's happening is Model Builder is being used for training an image classification model. In this case, the use case or scenario is trying to predict or detect cats versus dogs, right? So there's a dog here and a cat. And it just walks you through what are the steps that you would need to take in order to build your machine learning application using Model Builder for image classification. One of our very someone that we usually highlight here is Rubik's Code blog post. In this case, Rubik's talks about random forest and getting started with random forest. There's a very detailed walkthrough in terms of what, still using this Palmer Penguins data set. There's a detailed walkthrough of what it means to build random forest type of applications using ML.NET. And similarly, there's a guide here how you can build decision trees using ML.NET. And again, I believe that, yep, the same data set using Palmer Penguins data set. And again, it's a really detailed walkthrough how to build these applications using ML.NET. And specifically in this case, I believe it's the API that's used.
So why are they so obsessed with penguins, Luis?
I don't know, but I said that I was going to look into it last time, but I have yet to look into why this Penguin data set. But it looks like it's a pretty good one. Like I think they did, Rubik's did here they did clustering, they did regression, they pretty much everything. They were able to use this Palmer Penguin data set, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, actually, Nicola is the name of the author of these, and we're hoping to have Nicola on our stand-up soon so that they can talk about all their blog posts and such, and then maybe we can ask Nicola like why penguins.
Yep.
So it's stay tuned.
Yep, it will all be revealed soon. All right, let's move on. So recently we just did a post here on, we talked about this at the last stand-up, which is how you can go about building HTTP web APIs with minimal configuration. And the idea here in this walkthrough is just showing you how you can go about building your own. Last time we showed it off. And essentially you can, in about 16 lines of code, right, you can simplify your web APIs instead of using traditional MVC or controllers. For building web applications, you can sort of use this technique known as route to code to essentially just map a single endpoint, which is here, right? So you're mapping just a single endpoint, and you create a handler for handling and making predictions using a prediction engine pool here. So if this is something that you'd like to see as part of the offerings from Mlnet, whether that's tooling or different deployment methods, we'd really appreciate your feedback. So yeah, make sure to let us know whether this is something that you'd like to see, try it out, try to deploy your own machine learning models and let us know. Let's see here. So it's that time again, the virtual ML.NET Community Conference. We had our very first one last year. So it's that time again. So May 7th and 8th, make sure you mark your calendars for that time because that's when the next one will be. So we're really looking forward to having a lot of really great talks, just like we did the first time around. And if you are interested in giving a talk, you can sign up here, right? Here, go to Sessionize, and I'll paste a link in the chat here. It's also available in the community links that I pasted earlier. But you can go to Sessionize, and you'll see that you have until April 11th to go ahead and submit your talks. The topics, I think it's a little bit bigger, it might be hard to see. The topics vary widely, right? So things like MLOps, if you want to talk about real life use cases, or you have any sort of case studies in which you've used ML.NET and deployed it to production, that would be really, really interesting to hear. Any interoperability stories, whether that's building models in PyTorch or any other framework, and then also, bringing them in and scoring and using them to make predictions in ML.NET. If there's any F# related content or big data related content, we love to hear it. So again, make sure to submit your talk or your proposal by the 11th. And yeah, we're really looking forward to getting your applications and your talks in.
Yeah, and I think we already have like 10 submissions, which is awesome, and they're all like very interesting topics. So looking forward to seeing ton of new submissions from everyone, and all the different topics and areas that we get into with ML.NET.
Totally. Yep. All right. So that gets us to the end of our community links. Thanks for putting that up there so you folks can access all the links that we went over today in that link there, the URL list. And with that, let me turn it over. Bree, are you going to be?
Yeah. So I can share mine. Cool. So now maybe I should show our little faces too. Yeah, awesome. So now I'm going to show a demo of some of the new stuff that's coming up for Model Builder. So I have a web app that I'm going to add to and kind of walk through some of the new things, and then XiaoYun and Becca will dig into it a little bit more. But I wanted to show it in practice first. Yeah, so I have got my Visual Studio open here, and I've got a web application, and I'm just going to do the classic iris example. Iris is a type of flower, and it's kind of like the hello world of machine learning samples, where you have measurements of, there's 4 different measurements of the flower, and then you use that to predict the species or the type of iris flower, and there's 3 different types. So what I'm going to do is right click on my project, my ASP.NET Core web application, and hit add. Traditionally, you'd go to machine learning, which is one way to do it, but I'm going to show you the new, a second way we've added, and you'll see why in a second, is to add new item. So once this opens up here, you'll see that there's now an option for machine learning model through ML.NET. And I'm actually going to name this, let's say, iris measurement model. So once I hit add, you'll see that it actually gets added to the solution. Give it a second. Sharing my screen and video really takes its toll on my poor CPU. So let it load. And something happened. There we go. So you can see that it opened up Model Builder as you'd expect, but something that's new is this MB config file. So this is actually added to my solution when I add new item. And let me keep going through and you can see what gets added to the MB config. So for this case, I'm going to do text. I'm going to do classification. I want to know what type of iris flower. I'm just right now, going to train locally with my CPU, and then I'm going to choose it from a file. So actually, let me go back a step. And no, it's on this step. So let me show you choosing a file. This is, the same as always. Oop, I'm moving too fast for my computer here. Oh, we found a bug live. Awesome. So I'm going to choose this iris data set and see if it brings me back to the data page. Apologies for the slowness here. Again, my computer doesn't like sharing and video and streaming and all this stuff at the same time. But while this is loading, I did want to mention, so this is actually, we're doing something different with this build of Model Builder. We're actually doing a private preview to try and gather feedback from everyone. So we'll send out the link for that and we'll see if, is it going to crash live? There we go. Okay. So I know I see Becca like crossing her fingers like, please.
Yeah, these are my bugs. So I'm like,
no, this is great. So I chose my file here. It loaded up here and you can see this is a preview of the data. And I'm going to choose species here as what we want to predict. In advanced data options, you'll see this is a little bit different. We had advanced data options before, but we've kind of reorganized it a bit, and there's a few more options. So in this case, you can choose the purpose. So whether you want it to be a feature, if you want to ignore it, or if it's the label. I already have my label and I want to ignore this column. You can also change the data type here. I think single, Boolean, and string are the options. And then category, you can choose if it's a categorical feature or not. So I'm going to save these options here. It's going to update my data preview like normal. I'm going to go on to the next step and then let it train, let's say for 20 seconds. And then we'll start that training. And so now it's starting. And once it's done training, you're going to see that files actually get added to my Solution Explorer as a code behind to this MB config. So we'll let it finalize here. And if we open right here, let's see if it actually finds the model. I might need to give it a bit more time if it doesn't find the model, but we'll give it a second here. And of course, as always, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to post that in the chat. So in this case, it looks like in the time that I gave it, it was able to explore one model and with an accuracy of about 94%. So we'll let the training complete and the model finalize here. And it shouldn't be this slow for all of you, unless you're also streaming. So let that complete. But yeah, so going back while this is doing its thing, for this private preview, we'll send out the link where you can sign up with your name and your email, and then we will send you the access instructions on how to do it. We call it a private preview, but anybody can sign up for it. And then what we're asking is that you leave feedback as you're trying it out. And we have this feedback button right here where it would go straight to a GitHub repo. So this can be things like bugs, things that you really like about the new version, or things that you wish would be changed, or things that are missing. So as you're going through it, if you decide you want to try out this preview, we do ask that you leave us some feedback. All right, so model is done, and you can see here behind my MB config, I have my consumption and training code and then my actual model. So this is really cool because before you would actually have to add 2 new projects to your solution, and you would have to do that manually. Now it gets added automatically and is in the same solution. So you can see this training file here is the pipeline that it chose with AutoML, and the trainer and data transforms, and then the consumption code here is going to be similar to what was in that class library that was generated before, where you get your input class, your model input, your model output, which is going to return the prediction and the score, and then that predict method, and then a sample of how to do that. Let me show you what's really cool about this. So going back to my iris measurement model, obviously you can continue on, and another bug, cool, mark that. So once you hit predict, it should give us a prediction here. And once it does that, I'll show you when I actually close out of this, and again, we'll let it do it. Actually, I think I should be able to close out now, but I want to show you what's really cool is if I close out of this right now, and then I double clicked on this MB config, it actually brings me back to the same state that it was before. So previously, Model Builder did not have any sort of state, and if you wanted to close out a Model Builder and then come back, you would have to restart everything. And you can imagine if you spent lots of time training and you wanted to go back and use the UI to evaluate, or any sort of save state, you'd have to restart. That can be really frustrating. So now you can, we have this sort of reentrancy config-based training. So then we've updated the consume step a bit. We're still working on this, and this is gonna change up a bit for when you get the preview. But we've got the code snippet, which shows you how to use it. And then what's really cool now is before we actually generated that console application automatically, which would use your model. Now you can choose whether you want to add that to your solution or not. So this will create a console application that uses your model. And then this one would add a web API that actually uses your model as well. So another advantage of this kind of config-based training is that I can add multiple models at once. So you can see I actually have another MB config here, which is, and I'll open this up, which is actually an image classification model. And you can see it's saved that state here. In this case, I only trained with a few different, I use my CPU, so I only did a small amount of training images. But you can see that it saved this state as well for my training. And so I have these two MB configs. I'm going to go ahead and run the application with both of the models. Actually, I guess I should show you the code for that first. So what I've done is I've added this prediction engine pool service for both the measurement model using the, let me go back here, using the length, width of the petal and the sepal. And then also I've added the image classification model here. So what this one does is it actually takes in an image and tells you what species it is. So there's two different ways of predicting depending on the information that you have. So then in index, I've got two different forms, and I'm not a web developer, so sorry if this isn't pretty, but you got a form which does uses the classification model for the measurements, and then you've got one that actually does it for the image as well. And if we go into our file here, we actually use dependency injection for the two different prediction engine pools, and then I've got two on post methods, one for the measurements and one for the photo as well, which will use the predict method to bring back what the predicted species is. So I'm going to run this just to show you what that looks like. I'm a little scared of how long this is going to take to run. Yes, thank you, John Wood. We also think you're awesome. It's working so hard. And I guess while this is going, because I don't know how long it's going to take, there's actually something else that's really, really cool with this model, this MB config, which is that, oh, is it going to load before I had it? I'll just go ahead and tell you, is that you can actually train with this MB config using the CLI. So I will open this up here, and I've already got it open into the Iris ML app directory. If I go to MLNet, you'll see a new command here, which is train. And this actually uses the config file to be able to train with the CLI. So you could go from Model Builder to the CLI and back and forth. So what that will look like is this. You've got training config, and then you would put in your config file. So in this case, I think it's iris measurement.mb config, and this is what that would look like. And then once you hit enter, it would go ahead and train using this MB config. So you don't have to enter in all the options in the CLI itself. You can have it all in this MB config. And Becca, I think, is going to go through what that actually looks like behind the scenes. Here is the web app that I created with my limited web application knowledge. So if we wanted to try something here, this is in centimeters. We can say it like this and predict, and then it'll use that iris model to predict these species. So that's obviously using the measurements. And then if we wanted to try it with an image, I've got a test image here, called iris run, and then we'll predict, and we'll give it a second to, it's using the image classification model that I trained through Model Builder to predict what the species is there. And then let me go to the chat to see if there's any questions so far. No questions yet. It's working very hard. And there we go. So there's the image that I chose, and this is the species that it predicted based on the image and the image classification model. So yeah, so I guess the main points here, I mean, the main changes here are obviously we now have this designer config-based training that you can use between Model Builder and the CLI, which saves state. So you don't have to restart Model Builder when training or when reopening, and you could see, you could check this into GitHub, and then someone else could see it and have the same save state. You can have more than one model in one solution. You have the option to choose the sample applications you want to add versus it being added automatically. So yeah, some pretty big changes here. And I think that's it for my demo. So feel free, like I said, yeah.
I just have one more thing to add.
Yes.
The MB config, we're also going to try to use it so that you can train in Azure using Azure ML. So you'll be able to hook it up into your DevOps pipelines and integrate it into your applications, and it'll all kind of be driven from this config.
Yep. Yeah, great point. So yeah, so I forget which button. Is this the button? Oh, I always do the wrong button. Cool. So I think, Becca, are you next? Are you going to show us the config file? Cool.
Yep.
So I will switch it over to you then. And if you could zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Hold on. Oh, shouldn't I just be able to? Oh, there we go. Too far or good?
I think that's good.
Okay. And everyone can see, I assume?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So this is the MB config file that Bree has been mentioning. We wanted to give you guys kind of a preview of what it looks like, because we would love your feedback on whether this makes sense and whether it seems clear and easy to use. As you can see, it's just a JSON that contains all the information required for training. So version 0, going to be a lot of changes to this as we move forward. Right now, this is our V0. So really simple, you specify what scenario type you're going to be using. This one is classification. I wanted to use Bree's iris data, but that data is actually kind of boring. It's just numbers. So instead, I pulled up the Titanic data set, which has a little bit more, it's morbid, but it has a little bit more interesting columns. So you specify here in the data source. Actually, sorry, let me show you the environment first. Let's go categorically like Model Builder does. So this represents what you picked in your scenario. Then ignore that for a little while. Then you have an environment. So we specify here the local CPU, which is all that's available for text training right now. But I do have a image training over here. This is the beginning of setting up an image training. So it has the Azure environment here. So you are able to specify your Azure environment, and then we just save your subscription ID and resource group and workspace name, basically all the things you specify in that dialog, and then are able to reload your Azure environment completely. So theoretically, you should be able to, just copy this Azure environment over into another training session, and bam, you're using that Azure environment for this as well. So kind of the most complex thing on this one is going to be our data source. So data source for this is our tabular file, because we're using just a CSV. You specify the file name, its location, and then we're able to reload in Model Builder your data preview and everything just straight from that file. Anyone who's used advanced data options know that we now let you change the delimiter and the decimal marker and the header from Model Builder. If you don't want to do it in the UI, now you could do it here. Say, I don't have a header, I just change this to false. Great. And next time we reload, we'll respect that and say, okay, this file doesn't have a header. So just use kind of those base columns. And then we have all of your column properties here. So for each column, you have the name, the purpose, which is either Bree showed, this is when we open that advanced data dialog. This is all of the options for that. So your column purpose is what we're using it for, right? It would either be feature. I could ignore the passenger ID if I wanted, then the column purpose becomes ignore. And then label, or if you're doing recommendation, user or item. And then you have a column data format. So this is how we know how to load your data. This is what Bree mentioned. It's either a single, a Boolean, or a string. So pretty simple there. And then the final information that we want is whether it's categorical or not. So for example, in here, again, sorry for the morbid data set, but if you survived as a Boolean and Booleans are categorical, your class that you were in, which class of the boat is a single, but it's also categorical. So you're able to really specify in detail here what, like what your column looks like. Sex is either it's a string and then it's also categorical, right? Because there's a limited number of options. So you're able to really specify to great detail how you want all of this to be loading. And in the future, this will include, different operations you maybe want to do on your data. And then, for example, if I wanted to change this to regression, I could do this straight from the file. I could change this to regression, and then I'm no longer going to predict my survived. This becomes just a feature column. And then maybe my age, I want to predict age. This becomes the label. So it becomes really easy to kind of manipulate what you're doing. I wouldn't necessarily overwrite all of my training with a new regression model, but maybe you would copy this and make a new one if you, for some reason, wanted to make an age regression model on this one. So yeah, would love to hear your feedback on whether this makes sense for all of the things that you've seen here. And if you sign up for the private preview, which please do, you can play with all of your data and see if you like what we have in the MB config and what changes it needs to be clearer. With that, I'm going to hand over to XiaoYun because I'm sure you're all very curious about the remainder of this file, including artifacts and run history, and how do you actually load your model, and he's going to talk about that.
So I had a few questions.
Totally.
So I see that you're doing this, and it's just a JSON file, and you're editing it in VS Code. But I assume that I could also edit it in Visual Studio as well.
Yeah. Do you mean load it into Visual Studio and edit it with our UI, or do you mean like edit it as a JSON?
Both, actually. Well, I guess edit it would be through the UI, right, through Model Builder. But then as a JSON file, just like what you did right now, where you change a few of the values. You should be able to do that in Visual Studio as well, right?
Totally. You can do both in Visual Studio. I think so. We'll automatically open anything as an MB config into that Model Builder UI, but Visual Studio has an open with option, I believe. So you could do that and edit it directly from there as well. Gotcha.
And I noticed that some of these, right, like so it's categorical. That's a Boolean true false. Would it be possible? Is there? Would I get Intellisense, or I think in Visual Studio Code you also have these like type hints that kind of help you out to provide you with which values which are the valid values that you can basically I guess enter for one of these properties.
Totally. So you're saying that's something you want, right?
Yeah, is that possible now? And if not, I mean, yeah, I think it would be pretty cool.
It doesn't work now, but we definitely should, because we don't want you to get messed up, right, with like, oh, whoops, I forgot this E on here and now everything doesn't work. So yeah, this is really early stages, but absolutely we would want to do that so that you know what is available for each of these purpose data format. Because I think once you know what they are or what the options are, it's kind of clear from the UI. I think it's clear. But for sure, like you want to know what these options are before you change anything.
Gotcha. Cool.
Are there any?
We're hoping, Luis, that you're going to sign up for the preview and leave that feedback so that we know how to improve in future releases.
Totally.
Sounds good.
Be like, I don't know how to do this. You need to tell me what my options are.
Yep.
All right, we ready to switch over to XiaoYun?
Hello. Hi, everyone. So after Becca, I'm going to introduce you with the left two sections inside the Titanic, inside the bconfig file, the artifact and the run history. So the difference is that if the Becca says about the environment and the data source and the other parts are all editable by the user, then the artifacts and the run history are the sections that used by the model builder itself to restore the training history, and therefore we don't suggest you to manually edit this and just keep this to the model builder. So let's first go through the artifacts. And we currently have two different artifacts, the one for the local artifacts, as we can see here, and the other type is for the Azure training. And for the Azure training, we have an extra two fields. One is a JSON label, and the other is the Onyx model saved here. And the artifacts will save the model, which will be used in the evaluation page to predict the model. So technically speaking, that if you want to swap over a different model to the evaluation page to play with, you can simply just replace this path to point to the model that you want. But again, that's not suggested. Just leave this to the model builder. And the second part and the a more complex part is the run history. We are expecting to record all the run history inside the model builder so that we are able to compare the different, we are able to launch the different several experiments using the same data source and to compare them in the same time. So in the run history, we save all the trials information, as you can see here, like the train. This is actually the same information that we output to the output window, like the current trainer's name and the score and the duration time. And the sequence is the same as the training as the sequence when we launch the different trainers. And other than the trials, we also have, let me unfold this. We also have the matrix name. The matrix name is the evaluation matrix, and which is the score that we showed here. So in this case, the score is actually the micro accuracy, and in the first trial it's 0.81, and the second is 0.81, blah blah blah. And the second and the third part is the pipeline. The pipeline is it's the pipeline. It's actually the best pipeline that when we go through all the trials, we find out the best trials and we record its pipeline inside here. And if we and you can see that it's although it's a string from inside run history, it's actually a JSON. And if you unfold it, it will have a structure of this. This structure is still in the early stage, and we are looking forward to the feedbacks to how to make this more organizable and more clear to look at. But currently, we have the estimator type, which is like the estimator's name for each of the pipe stage, and we also record the inputs and the outputs for that estimator. So, for example, it's in this np config, the best pipeline will have the first stage of the one hot encoding, and which input is p class x and the other the left columns, and the second stage is replace missing value for all the numeric features, and inside and for the last part, for the other parts, so we also record the trainer information, and the trainer information is a bit complex, and as you can see that it has more properties than those estimators, because it will have because the trainer itself includes the hyperparameters, so that we need to record more information so that we can inside the JSON for the reentrance usage. So right now the pipeline is used for generating the code that you can see in the consume page. For example, in the code in the training.cs pipeline function, this pipeline JSON will be used to generate the pipeline code there, and also in the same thing for the web API project and for the console app project. And again, this is all in the very early stage, and we are looking forward for your feedback so that we can keep improving on this MB config file. And that's all. Hand it back to you, Bree. You're muted.
Classic. I just pulled a Jake.
I was actually muted when I was telling you you were muted, so I also pulled a Jake.
I was just saying thank you, XiaoYun. That was great to see all that. Becca as well. And we have a few questions in the chat that I want to get to, and then we can continue talking about Model Builder and how you all that are watching can access this version of it. So first question from Andre. And we kind of answered this in the chat a little bit, but Andre asked, with the evolution of C#, .NET 5 and 6, and Mlnet, do you think this stack is head-by-head to Python competitors, or are they missing something? Jake, do you want to tackle this one?
So I have some thoughts on it. I think that in some ways you can think of them as competitors, but with ML.NET, it's kind of more of the coordinator, right? So we want it to be like, with the way that it's organized with the iData view and streaming the data, and then the pipeline format, right? It's more about being able to coordinate training. So we want it to be able to grow to adapt to a lot of different frameworks, and be able to work with TensorFlow.net and Torch Sharp and the existing trainers that we already have in ML.NET. But I wouldn't necessarily view it as a competitor, more like a pattern for .NET developers to be able to leverage machine learning in their applications, right? So it's sort of more the conduit to allow .NET developers to leverage it rather than kind of competing with it. Someone did post, I guess we did, being the .NET channel, did post a paper in there about the performance, and it does do really well, especially in some of the classical machine learning algorithms. But I think for us, like, we feel our value add is more in, lighting this up to be possible for .NET developers than to actually trying to go head to head and compete with. Like, we hope that by having ML.NET be capable of, using TensorFlow.net and Torch Sharp and other things like that in the future, that it'll be basically the equivalent in terms of performance, but it'll be hopefully easier to use for .NET developers. They'll be able to just integrate it into their applications and deploy it. So we think that the win is really more in the .NET framework and ecosystem, not necessarily just the perf.
And yeah, to add to that, we're as happy if you successfully train a model with ML.NET and then consume it, or if you train in Python and then successfully consume that with ML.NET. So Jake said it really well, I think. Does anyone else have any other thoughts to add on that topic? Cool. So Andre, I hope that answered your question. So next we have Lawrence. Do you have pre-built models deployed with ML? You might want to be a bit more specific there. You're able to consume pre-built models with ML.NET. Like, for instance, you can consume Onyx models or TensorFlow models through the API. But if that didn't answer your question, feel free to be a bit more specific. We also have a samples repo where we have a bunch of different training pipelines set up that you can clone that and get started with that. But feel free to elaborate if I didn't answer your question. Okay. So no more questions in the chat for now. Keep them coming. Louise, do you have that link open for the private preview?
I do. Yeah. Let me paste that into the chat.
So we want to show you how you can sign up. So it was just posted here, and I'll show you our own. If you go to this link, you will be able to sign up. Just leave your name and your email. And then in the next few days, we will actually send out how to leave feedback and how to access the preview as well. So you can get started playing around with it and start using it, start leaving your feedback. So the format that we kind of envision here is, before your first session, you fill out a quick form or quick feedback. After your first session, you fill out quick feedback, and then you're free to continue using it and filing issues as you go with that feedback button in Model Builder. So super excited to start getting feedback from that. Anything?
Just to hype it up a little bit, I'm really excited about the preview. We have a lot of features that have been in the works for a little bit. There's some things behind the scenes that you won't necessarily see, but we are testing. So we actually have two different AutoMLs that we're kind of competing against each other. XiaoYun on the call hooked up A/B testing. So we'll be, as you're training, we'll be evaluating the two different AutoMLs. We're hoping our new AutoML will, if it isn't already, will evolve to be significantly better. It's based on technology that is open source, which is NNI, and we're going to keep working with that team to advancing it in the future. So we're really excited about that. So we didn't really cover that much in this demo or config or anything like that, but that's another thing that we'll be testing if you're in this private preview. So we're really excited to collect that data and use it to iterate on our AutoML. Also for the preview, please try it out. Give us feedback on anything and everything, right? Like if you don't like something in the config, let us know. If you would do it a different way, let us know. We can't necessarily, everyone has their own opinion, so we can't necessarily take into account everything, but we'll definitely consider it and try and integrate it into the final version. Well, I guess not final, but the next iteration of it before we ship it, in the full public release channel. So please try it out. We're excited to get your feedback.
Sweet.
And to clarify, the feedback that's going to be in the machine learning model builder repository, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I'll paste that into the chat as well. So you'll also get it in the communications once you sign up and fill out the form, right? But also, if you want to keep it handy, outside of even the preview, if you have any feedback for model builder and things that maybe weren't discussed here that you'd like to see, feel free to open up an issue there and provide your feedback.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, in Model Builder, you are able to do it as well, which is nice because if you're already in Visual Studio and just want to report it, and I can show that again if I can find it. So I'll share my screen one more time. Get rid of this. So right at the bottom left here is where you would do that, and this will actually take you to a template that you can tag that is already already has the tag for being part of this preview. So it's super easy. Once you hit this, it opens up, hopefully. Right here. I'm gonna bring it over. And we're also looking for feedback on specific things as well. So this is kind of one of the templates here, but Becca, I think you might have that list of things that we're really looking to test. Let me go back to here. Or like in your head, I think one of the things was obviously just the MD config in general. We also want to learn more about, actually, let me go back to this model builder instance. We want to learn more about the advanced data options here. Is this enough for what for things that you might need to override, for things that we kind of auto predict for you. We also want to know, so we're going to be, like I said, upgrading this consume, this last consume next steps type page. So want to hear feedback of if this is helpful for you as you're, starting to consume your model. So those are some of the things. Is there anything else I missed, team, of things we want to look at?
Well, one comment. So also, with this new, I forget exactly what we're calling it publicly now, but with the config and code behind approach, with the code behind, we want feedback there too, right? We were trying to emulate what WPF and WinForms does, where you have a designer and the code behind is generated behind it. So we're hoping that it's a pattern you're already familiar with and comfortable with. But if not, give us that feedback too. Like, let us know, how we can improve that process. So give that a look, take a look at that code, review everything. Essentially, everything's up for review in this preview. Take a look at the code and give us your harshest feedback. Take into account.
Yeah. So a few comments in the chat. Adi said, I think many people are in learning mode in the ML area, so a how-to video series would be very helpful. Yeah, definitely. Like,
and I just pasted it into the chat, Adi. So John Wood, who we kind of showed off here earlier in one of the community links, he's got a ton of videos, right, related to step-by-step how you would go about building for the different scenarios that ML.NET enables. He's got quite a few, so you may want to check out John Wood's channel, and I pasted that into the chat here.
And then we've got a question here. Are there any limitations on preview, such as data? Nope, no limitations. Anyone is free to try it out. You're also free to, send the link to, other people that might want to try it out. We do ask that you do fill out the form if you are going to try it. But other than that, no limitations. There may be bugs that we haven't found yet. We have done lots of bug bashing, but there may be things that we haven't found. So, of course, we hope that you let us know, and so we can get quick fixes in for you, or fixes in whenever we can. So yeah. And Andre has another question. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's one sort of warning as well. It is going to be like, once you through this process, you're going to be on our preview channel. So. Like in the extension manager, you'll start getting updates more frequently. It will, I don't know how frequent yet, but I'm assuming you'll probably, install and then get an update a couple days later. You might get an update a couple days later. So just, I guess, we hope you keep updating. So if you see an issue, please check for updates, because we may have already resolved it. Or also check for updates, because we might be introducing new bugs. Hopefully that's not the direction it goes. But just so we keep moving towards a more stable version as we go from preview to our GA release. And
Andre asked for our Twitter handles. I don't think everyone here has Twitter, but Luis has his in his on his name here, and then I don't have mine, but I can put it on a little banner here. Luis and I are pretty active on Twitter. Luis more than me, but we do try to keep everyone updated about ML.NET stuff there. So definitely, and will this work? Ta-da! That one's mine. I don't think Becca, XiaoYun, or Jake have Twitter, right?
I do, but I haven't started using it. But
Yeah.
1 year, I'll make it my goal to be. I actually use LinkedIn more, but
yeah.
Feel free to find me there. But I will eventually start to use Twitter.
Yeah, I feel like you have to if you're a developer,
It's true.
We have a question here from Silsoft. Can you offer samples using text-based biology data like DNA of protein sequences? This could be useful besides typical image analytics. Not quite sure. I don't know if any of us here basically deal or have done projects with DNA protein sequences, but if you could expand on what you'd like to see and even provide feedback in the repo, that would be great, Silsoft. Yeah. One thing that I will maybe point you to in the meantime, and I don't know how helpful this is some of the folks from CS Biology, we had them earlier in one of the stand-ups. They actually focus on these types of problems, and they're actually using machine learning and different statistical approaches to solve their problems. So that's their GitHub page. And you can also check out the fsharp.stats project, which I think is built not only for these sort of biology type of problems, but because it's built by the folks from CS Biology, it tends to favor those types of scenarios. So those might be things that you may want to check out. And like I said, we also had them, I think 2 or 3 stand-ups ago, they were on here. So maybe you'd want to check that out.
I think actually my roommate, who is getting his master's in, he's doing some sort of biology, bioinformatics or something like that, I think he's doing something like this for one of his assignments right now. So I should try and help him out, be his tutor, and try with ML.net.
I was just going to add to that, if anyone has data out there that you are trying to use with Model Builder and can't, whether it's because it's in a completely different format, like we only accept delimited formats right now, if it's in a different format, please file an issue about it. We want to know what data formats you have that we don't support. And if it is a delimited file and we just can't load it for some reason, also please file that. I love seeing your different data. That surprises me and is edge cases that we haven't covered before. So please, if you have data that you can't use, file it because we want to know.
Also, data sources. If there's data sources that you're currently writing a lot of code to get it from something into a CSV or into a SQL, like if we can sort of short circuit that and find a way to offer another data source option in Model Builder, we'd love to. So let us know where your data is and what you're currently doing to connect your data to Model Builder or CLI. Or ML.net.
So John asks, do we put issues on the GitHub that we find in the preview? Yep. So you can either do it via the feedback button in Model Builder, which will take you to our GitHub repo, or you can go straight to the GitHub /.net/machine learning Model Builder. I think we'll have it in the community links. If not, the email that gets sent out with the instructions for the private preview, we'll have that link in there as well. But yeah. We've got a question here. Is it possible to identify better image quality between identical images or same images using image classification?
I don't know if you necessarily use image classification, but I think you could use, I think there would be a way to do it in ML.net with model composition. Like I think if you, XiaoYun might have more insight on this, but I think that there's a way to use like ResNet as sort of like a featureizer. So you would use that as inputs to training the model, in addition to using images that you'd have to somehow label it, right? You'd have to have like a collection of images and label it as, give it some sort of quality rating or something. And then I think if you basically use the ResNet model as like a featureizer, pass that in, and use your labeled data, like labeling each of those images, you might be able to get a model. I don't know what its performance would be, but Malibu seems like that. Like
she's very excited about image classification. Very, very excited.
So I think it's possible to hook something up. If you have a scenario that you are trying to get working with that and you have a data set, I'd be happy if you go into our repo and kind of file it and share that data set. We can try to build a solution and see how well it performs.
Great. Andre, another question. Andre, I'm loving these questions. Which courses about MLNet do you recommend? So we already said John Wood's series, like he has a channel of ML.net, and I think John's watching right now. I saw a question from him. Is awesome. Like he covers, from intro to advanced and a lot of different topics. So that I would recommend. He's actually working on some other courses as well, which are not, he's currently working on them right now that are not just videos on YouTube, but actual like courses through other platforms. So that'll be really awesome to see. Not quite out yet. I don't know if you all know of other courses out there specifically. Any ideas, team?
I think the ones in our community links that Louise shared earlier are good. Yeah. I don't want to say, is it Rubik's Code?
Yeah, it's Rubik's Code.
Rubik's Cube, so okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, Rubik's has a ton of great stuff. I also pasted a link into the chat here. Yes.
Thank you,
for what she said. For a workshop that we did a while back, most of the stuff is still fairly up to date still, and at the very least you can get the idea of how you would go about the different phases of from end to end, from preparing your data, working with your data, all the way to using models trained elsewhere, right, and consuming them in ML.net, which I think there was a question about earlier in the chat. You're on mute right now, Bree.
So Danisco asked, wow, that's twice today. There might be some Microsoft Learn courses too. Not yet, not specifically on ML.net, but that's actually in the works right now. So that's very exciting. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say about it, but it's happening.
I mean, TBD.
I don't think it's a secret, but it's happening. So Ali asked, do you have some benchmark on how much faster ML.net is compared to the popular Python frameworks when doing the same job? So Louise posted earlier a paper that has some comparisons between its ML.net, H2O, and scikit-learn for classification and regression, possibly another one. And the main idea there is that scikit-learn and H2O couldn't handle larger data sets, like it just wouldn't even complete the training, and because it loads everything into memory, versus ML.net does it in a very training in a streaming fashion. So ML.net was actually able to complete the training while the others couldn't. And then there is actually another one, Louise, maybe you have that link to someone else. It's not us, but someone else did like a quick benchmarking test of PyTorch versus ML.net on both for inferencing, both on CPU and GPU. So that was pretty interesting as well. I think we had that as one of our community links previously. So we'll find that and add that in the chat as well. I think they yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to add, kind of going back to what I said earlier, is like ML.net itself is kind of more the coordinating, right? Like the algorithms themselves are almost identical between the two platforms, but it's how we use them, right? The iData view streaming the data through it unlocks a lot of potential that some of the in-memory only, like Bree said, the in-memory only trainers can't handle, right? So you get some speed and perf improvements from how we do it, but ultimately the algorithms themselves are performing identically.
Right. And so the paper or the tests that they did with PyTorch and ML.net inferencing, I think they found that inferencing on CPU was faster for ML.net, right? And then the opposite for GPU. So we just posted that in the chat so you can take a look as well. Great question, though. We've got this recommendation, ML model for dog speech. That would be a nice project. Yes, it would. Malibu talks a lot. And I can interpret some of them. Like, I know when she's hungry, thirsty, or has to go outside. But, the other ones, I'm not sure. They actually have an app for cats now that you record your cat and then it tells you what the cat is saying. I don't know if it uses machine learning or how it works or if it's at all accurate, but if any of you have
I'm
tried
just wondering if I could use it to teach me how to speak cat. That's go see if I can make that happen.
That would be interesting.
Janice, if that's a project that you want to take on and then submit it for the virtual Mlnet community conference, we'd be happy to take it.
Yeah, we would. You can use Malibu as a test subject. And yep. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes left. Any other questions, post them in the chat. We're here. You've got us. If not, we'll talk about other things, I guess. Let me think. While we're waiting for questions, comments, and anything else in the chat.
And I think one of the areas, I don't know if we touched upon it, right? But just to give you an idea of what you might be able to do with this config-based training, right, is you might think about starting in the UI with Model Builder. And as Bree showed off, you're also able to continue or retrain inside of the CLI or using the CLI. So what you might want to think about doing is if you're doing CI/CD types of jobs, maybe starting in the UI and then building that into your CI/CD pipeline might be something worth looking into if you're already doing that. And if you do, let us know how that works for you.
Yeah. So Ali had another question. Do you have an estimate of when ML.net can work on ARM-based CPUs? Jake?
I can maybe touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
For this one, we're aligning with the effort of .NET. So I believe that they have a goal of having it work with the next version of .NET. I don't know if that's partial or full, but we're essentially on their timelines. We're heavily dependent on .NET features. There is some special work for ML.NET, but we're hoping to squeeze it in that same timeline. But I don't think we have an exact estimate right now, just that it's in the works. I'd have to go check the timelines on the .NET. .NET.
But it is happening.
It is happening.
And then Andre asked if we could post a link of the channel that we recommend. So if we want to post John's channel again, And then I think Louise also posted a workshop that we did a while back. That it's a self-paced, self-guided workshop. That's also a really great way to learn about ML.NET. Starts from the beginning, and it really goes into the data, the training, evaluating, saving the model, deploying the model. Goes into ML ops and deep learning and a few other things. So that's a good place to start as well.
Can you maybe put the private preview link up again?
Yeah.
As a final reminder to everyone to sign up
Of
for the private
course.
preview.
And that. Louise, are you posting that? I just assume because you posted all the other links.
I don't have it handy. Sorry. If you have it handy,
That's okay.
Let's see.
I think MB private.
Is it in the community links?
It is in the community links, so check that out.
It's okay. I got it. I'm just making sure that actually. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna post it as a banner. Oh, you beat me to it. Thank you.
I cheated.
And then I'll post it in the chat as well. Cool. And Andre, talking to us directly, we agree. We love talking to you all and getting your feedback live, and being able to show, have these conversations with you all. It's really exciting. So thank you all for tuning in and leaving your feedback.
So I think we are running out of time, but I just want to thank Becca and XiaoYun for coming on. I usually am on here taking credit for all of their hard work. Also, Zuditu, who's not on the call today, thank you for your hard work as well. Thanks so much for coming on the call.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
for
looking forward to seeing everyone's feedback. Bye,
Yep.
everyone.
Talk to you later.
Bye.